Welcome. Good afternoon. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching the Sal Greco Show live here on X, YouTube, and Rumble, streaming on the Finest Unfiltered Network. Thank you for tuning in. Of course, if you're on Rumble or YouTube, please hit that like, share, subscribe button, notification button, hit that Rumble button. And if you're watching us on X, please hit that repost button and also share this out to all your friends and family because today is going to be a doozy. Hopefully you had a good morning in the last couple of days. Of course, there's always a lot in the news, and the news is like it changes every couple of minutes, and there's so much going on that I don't even think you could put it all into an hour show, a 2-hour show. It's just so much going on, especially between the police departments all over the United States. The presidency of President Trump, what's going on with that, how the country's being run, the whole tariff situation. So just there's a lot to unpack here. So first, I want to start off with something. This is something important because there's a chart that recently came out about population. So, and I want you to see this because this is very important. So this is the rank of from 1 to 10. And this is population-wise what's going on right now in this country, okay? And it'll give you the city, the state, the numeric increase, and the 2024 total population. So I'm going to go from 10 to 1. So you kind of put this in your head. You embed it correctly. So number 10 is Jacksonville, of course, from Florida, 16,365. And the total population 2024 is 1,009,833. Seattle in Washington, numeric increase of 16,813. Total population 2024, 780,995. Phoenix in Arizona, number 8, 16,933 increase, 1.6 million 2024 total population. Chicago, surprisingly, in Illinois at number 7, 22,164 numeric increase, total population 2.7 million. Charlotte, North Carolina, number 6, 23,423 numeric increase, 943,000 total population. Fort Worth City in Texas, 23,442 numeric increase, 1 million, a little over a million for 2024 total population. San Antonio, number 4 in Texas, 23,945 numeric increase, 1.5 million plus total population. And here's the big 3. Number 3, LA in California, 31,276 numeric increase, almost 9 million total 2024 population. Number 2, Houston, Texas at number 2. That's interesting. 43,217 numeric increase and close to 2.4 million total population. And number 1, of course, New York City, with an increase of 87,184 with a total population of almost 8.5 million, which you always hear the illustrious mayor of New York City screaming about 8.5 million people, 36 million in opinions, or whatever he says, whatever soliloquy he screams about. And this is the 15 cities with the largest numeric increase between July 1st, 2023 and July 2024, with populations of 20,000 or more as of July 1st, 2023. It's actually top 10 cities. And what should be mentioned here is a lot of those Brad from SoCals with their Sperry's and Vineyards must be moving into New York City, okay? And also, New York City's population is larger than Chicago, LA, and Philly combined in this instance. And actually, look at this chart. Number 11 is actually Miami. Miami is booming. And look, the total population is only it's less than 500,000 during the year, and it's only an increase of 16,000 and change. And trust me, I'm in Miami a lot down here in South Florida. That city is booming. There's real estate popping up left and right. And actually, Our guest today, who's now residing in Miami and South Florida, he could touch up on this a little bit too, because this is startling that Miami is not even in the top 10 and that Chicago is not in the top 3. That's also something. And I also want to point out with the population, is this total population, do they mention anything about the Trendiaragua types or all the migrant crime gangs that were infesting New York City and all these cities in general? Because that would also factor into why there's such a huge boost in New York City of all these people. Okay, and here's the big one. Cost of living in New York City, $49,623. It's number 4 as far as cost of living rank, and the disposable income is only $29,000, and the disposable income rank is number 2. So you see that kind of contrast there. And look, on that list of cost of living, the number 1 city is Hawaii, number 2 is Massachusetts, California number 3. Very, very interesting, take there in the top 4. Number 5 is New Jersey. This guy, I believe this is by states. So New Jersey's number 5, New York number 4, with a huge disparity from the cost of living to the disposable income is $20,000. That disparity alone will hurt you. But hey, Hawaii cost of living $55,000, and the disposable income is only $9,000. So rough times in Hawaii, man. But setting the table with something like that, it just, because I'm trying to show people, you see how New York City always says the financial capital of the world, and it's the heartbeat financially of not only this country, but of the world. So what you're seeing there, there's a lot to take in. Why there's such a disparity. Also, why the population seems to be flooding into New York City. I wonder, I would assume they included people that are there, or they're not including the migrant crime waves that are now residing in the streets of New York City and now fleeing on top of that. So that's very interesting, and it does show a lot that they're actually number 1 New York City. And the other cities underneath them, which surprisingly, the big 3, LA was there, but Chicago's not. Actually, Houston is on top of LA, which I find that's something, because the fact that LA, which has been known to be either 1 or 2, is number 3. That shows that the trends are in the I guess changing, because the trends used to be LA and New York. And here Marlon Bethel, he's also part of the Finance Unfiltered family, says the tax base is leaving for Sunbelt cities. This is something that, again, Marlon always points out how real estate money, it's leaving New York for many reasons. And also, he also stated here that those are migrants. So Marlon is actually, I would assume that a lot of that are migrants. And they're not the migrants you think, because as we know, a lot of Trendiaraguas and these kind of, migrant crime, gang members were infesting New York City and adding to the population there. And here, Marlon again says the Democrats are basically replacing the tax base with illegals, aka cheap labor. And I think you do have a point, because you see it in the streets in New York City. I mean, I don't know. Recently, I believe someone I know called me from New York City and said, Sal, I don't even recognize. First of all, Staten Island has become a, what can I say, a red light trap, speed cameras everywhere. And also there's a lot of these, we'll say migrants, or, I don't know if they're gang members, but they're in the northern part of Staten Island. You could see that. So they're trickling down, and New York City is no longer what you would remember 5 or 10 years ago, because now it's become a city where they love lawlessness. Chronicles of the Collapse says, imagine paying $4K a month to live amongst crime and madness. That is exactly the point. Marlon also said it happened before in the 70s and 80s. That's true. The crime and all that, it's history is repeating itself, folks. But it's who you're electing. And that's the segue into the next thing I wanted to show you, because there's Scott Stringer, who I believe is coming on the Finest Unfiltered or something. I think him or one of these candidates is because he's running for mayor. Let me show you his ad, because we also showed you a week ago Brad Lander's ad, which is outrageous, $750,000 for that ad to show. So let's show you this, and let's see what he's got to offer New York City.
New Yorkers gotta hustle, juggle, multitask. Powering through is how we survive. So we deserve a mayor who can get our city back on track and keep this schmuck out of our business. I'm Scott Stringer. As controller, I fought corruption and saved taxpayers' money. As mayor, I'll put a cop on every train, hire more mental health workers, turn vacant lots into affordable apartments, and tell Trump where to stick it. Most days before breakfast. Paid for by Stringer NYC.
Yeah. First of all, this man was comptroller. He was part of the same, we'll say, power structure. He did nothing. Okay. And this was, as you remember, this is the ad for Brad Lander. And the common trend here, fight corruption. They are part of the corruption problem. But Scott Stringer, I don't know who is running his campaign, but both of these guys, but this one you just saw, their main lead is, I'm going to fight Trump. They're playing to the fears of the base. Democrats don't like Trump, obviously, in New York City, even though that might be changing a little bit. I wouldn't say a lot, but why are you bringing up, I'm going to stand up to President Trump? You, as the mayor of New York City, need some kind of working relationship with Washington, D.C. You just saw in the last few years when you had a mayor who didn't have a good relationship with Washington, D.C., despite both being Democrats. And you saw what happened, how New York City is basically rising debt because the waste of money that's coming out of there in New York City is being wasted on migrant crime, migrant shelters and all of that. And there was no reprieve because New York City is mismanaged. It's probably the most mismanaged city in America as well, because you have corrupt actors like this guy who is the comptroller now running for mayor. And look, he puts a chart out. Trump's attacks. Brad spoke out. What does that have to do with New York City? The city and how it's being run has nothing to do with the president. You have to run a day-to-day operation of the city. Keep bringing Trump up is only going to, I say, rabble-rouse your base who hate him. And the biggest, it's the Letitia James factor, how she ran. I'm going to get Trump. That's why she got in office. But if you look at what she's actually was saying, policy-wise, and what she was going to do as Attorney General, there was never anything of substance. These people fearmonger, run on hate, and then try to split everybody into who they're going to vote for as far as their own party. And it's very unfortunate because, again, New York City, full of low information people and voters. It's really sad. And the problem is they're all pointing towards who? Andrew Cuomo, including Republicans. And I can't believe that. And Marlon actually, Chronicles of the Collapse, vacant lots into affordable apartments. How many decades have they promised more affordable housing? Keep score and know they are lying. That is exactly right, Chronicles. That is the point. They've been promising the same things for decades and nothing ever happens. Here's another one. Marlon Bethel says, how are you going to pay for, how are you going to pay for the tax base shrinking, Scott? He has no plan. That's right, Marlon. He has no plan. He sounds insane. And Neil S. says, whomever the mayor of New York City is affects me way more than who the president is. Local politics affect you. So you keep bashing the president, and it doesn't affect how New York City runs other than there's a federal budget. Now it might affect how Rikers is being run. We'll get to that a little later, but to keep harping your campaigns on we hate Trump, let's resist, you're doing nothing for the city. Nothing. You have an affordable housing crisis, okay? They don't know where to put people. They want to build. They don't know where to build. They can't get zoning laws changed where they have buildings that are empty, yet they can't convert them because of bureaucracy. You got a real estate racket running around buying up property, selling it. It's all elitists, all these people that are funding the Cuomo's and Mayor Adams, Eric Adams campaigns. And yet Republicans, where are you on this? Oh, Scott Stringer's at 500K. Only 500K. 750K for Brad Lander, 500K for Scott Stringer, just on that 30-second ad. Just remember those numbers. But again, New York City, why are you focused on these issues if you're running for office? And with Cuomo and Eric, why are Republicans behind these two candidates, funding them behind the scenes, not opposing them, when you have your own candidate that is actually in the outer boroughs really liked, well liked, and Curtis Sliwa? Why are you turning your back? No fundraisers, no attempt to try. You just basically are coalescing behind the Democrat. And then you complain because the Democrats basically slap around Republicans. You don't really have a Republican Party there. It's just one big uniparty. It really is. We had Oz Sultan on a week ago. He was the chairman of Harlem GOP for 15 years. Now he's in Pennsylvania, and he's kind of still involved. And he basically explained what's really going on. He was very truthful. And I suggest you go back and watch that episode from last week on Thursday, because it's eye-opener what's going on there. And you really don't have options because it boils down to the low information voter. Who are you going to vote for? Really think about it. Because if you're siding behind a guy that completely mismanaged the state, especially during the entire pandemic. And of course, this mayor who's there now, who is the most corrupt human being to ever be a politician in my eyes, with the way he ran the city. And by, the guy should be, counting his good graces that he's not in jail right now, or that he isn't facing a courtroom where he should have been. Because as you know, in a previous episode, just the other day with Serena Townsend, we basically covered why we believe he's very lucky not to be in jail, and he owes his life to President Trump, which also doesn't mean that he should be his puppet, though. That's a whole nother story. But again, New York City, do your due diligence, please, because the city's in a financial tailspin, and voting for Cuomo or Eric Adams will it's finished. New York will never come back, in my opinion. So the next subject I'm talking about is a mayor of Newark. That's Mayor Baraka. And we see that Alina Habba is at the Mayor Baraka hearing, which just happened, I believe it was today or yesterday. As you know, Baraka was arrested for, protesting or being near the Homeland Security, near that detention center, and obstructing ICE from doing their job, which is a felony. And here it is. It's freedomnews.tv.
Make way.
Only a scooter class.
Make way, guys. What we got here?
Yeah, you could scream and shout all you want, but I believe she's the U.S. attorney for New Jersey right now, at least interim, I believe. And she's going to court, and she's personally seeing the case, I believe, which is her prerogative. That's the prerogative of administration, which, whether you like it or not, it's run the way it is by who's in charge as the president. Trump did win the election. He won by a majority. So you could scream and shout all you want. When you guys, the other side of the aisle, was in charge, you could scream and shout for your things as well. There's that mugshot of Mayor Baraka, who committed a crime. And in my eyes, look, you could do this either way. It's just I think Baraka wanted to be arrested as a campaign ploy to try to prop himself up, I believe. I don't know if he's got aspirations to run for governor, but this kind of stuff will rally the troops behind you. So it's a little bit of a staged up, staged event that he wanted to be arrested. Now he's got that photo shot, a mug shot. You know what that did for President Trump? Is this now the new campaign slogan? Go get arrested, be the next Trump? I don't know, but I find that interesting what happened there, and I don't see the issue of the U.S. attorney walking in and they're screaming shame and all this stuff, because we could do the same for many others. There's the infamous mugshot of President Trump that will live in infamy. This is what people relate to. They thought his investigation, which I also believe in, his indictments were all a witch hunt. There was never really much substance to it. And if we go down the road of indicting presidents and ex-presidents, well, now these are the repercussions. The mayor and this guy did commit a crime that in the past they kind of overlooked if you did it, but you could enforce it. So they're enforcing it, and there's nothing you could do. So again, I don't see the issue with it, because again, it's a law you could enforce. I just think it's more Baraka is trying to give reasoning or a reason, like a kickstart to his campaign of whatever it is he's going to run for next, because he's trying to rally his base behind him, much like the president did in his own campaign. So very, very interesting times in the United States right now. And last but not least here, so I had mentioned about Florida, right, cooperating now with ICE. Ron DeSantis trying to get the law enforcement apparatus to now cooperate with ICE. So here's from the Epoch Times. Florida officials announced that 1,800 state highway patrol troopers are the first in the nation to receive federal credentials under an immigration and customs enforcement agreement, allowing them to arrest illegal immigrants on their own. And remember, this was at a press conference with the governor, Ron DeSantis, around May 12th, that stated that the ongoing partnership with ICE included what is known as 287G agreements, where state and local law enforcement partner with ICE to help arrest and deport illegal immigrants. There you see, you can cooperate with ICE. Why other states and especially other jurisdictions don't cooperate with ICE, I don't know. I don't know. New York City, I always says the NYPD. I used to pull over a lot of people that were second or third time getting arrested for DWI. They were illegal immigrants, so that made it a felony because they were arrested for multiple DWIs. They also would give you multiple different names on each arrest. They have the same, we say, NICE number was a New York State identification number, your fingerprints. Why we weren't allowed to notify ICE, why the courts weren't allowed to do it, meaning back in central booking, they're not allowed to do it. And of course, corrections wasn't allowed to do it because they would have ICE detention warrants. I think that's ridiculous, and that's part of the problem where, look, nobody's saying if you're illegal or you're trying to pay taxes, that's not what we're looking to deport. These people trying to live the American dream. But if you start committing crimes and you're a repeat offender, so that would mean that you've been convicted and then there's an ICE detention warrant on you, why can't you notify ICE to come and pick up one of their own? Florida's going to do it now. Things might change around here if that could happen, especially Florida State troopers, because I remember when you pull these people over, a lot of times, for whatever reason, you'll catch a lot of illegal immigrants driving, and there are multiple infractions on them in the past, been convicted for things, and now they're driving drunk, which I think is one of the most heinous crimes you could commit in the country. Some like to argue, but ask the mothers of victims of drunk drivers, ask them how they feel about that. So I think that is a heinous crime that you should, if you get caught and you have been convicted, you should be, and you're an illegal immigrant in this country or a gang member, you should be deported. So kudos to Florida, and first in the nation maybe can lead the charge, because I think that should be what New York City and other jurisdictions are doing. But now on to the main event today, which is my guest, who's a former corrections officer himself, and he's got quite the story. And I would like to say that that he also could chime in on the facts of what happened at Rikers, because he did work at Rikers, which was, now we know it's in receivership. And he could attest to this not notifying ICE stuff because you would lose your job if you had an ICE detainer warrant. So, and he's also an author, and he has an incredible story of a road to redemption, what he went through in his life. And I want to bring him on because he's very important to hear his side of the story and also his expertise on this whole Rikers Island situation. So here is Stephen Dominguez, author and former correction officer in the New York City DOCs. So how are you, Stephen? Welcome to the Sal Greco Show.
Thank you, Sal. I appreciate you, man. Yeah, the infamous Department of Corrections of New York City.
Yeah, it is. And here I got someone here, Anthony DiMaggio. Look at what he's saying. When I was the booking lieutenant in Yonkers, we had to contact the chief to get permission to cooperate with any federal immigration enforcement agencies who were looking to take custody of an illegal immigrant that we had booked. So again, look at what you have to go through. And it's really, it's just like common sense, yet everybody wants to make this a political issue, which is why this is the holdup. So before we get into that, because obviously you dealt with that yourself in corrections, and you could give a little bit of the procedure that you can't violate still to this day. So Stephen, tell us a little bit of Reader's Digest version of yourself and how you even came about to be in corrections. You know, a little bit of your story before we move on to how and what was going on while you were at Rikers.
Well, I had the genius idea of taking the New York City Correction Officer's exam prior to turning 21 years of age. I attended John Jay College at the time, which many know is a college based on criminal justice. I wanted to get into forensic psychology, not so much on the law enforcement aspect. But there were many routes that I took, many things that I learned from college professors that were actually on the job. One of my favorite professors was a homicide detective in the NYPD. He did corrections for 7 years prior to being NYPD. He explained the dynamics. He also explained how things are a lot more different now that he's been in the jail, and now when he worked, in sectors of the city in the 5 boroughs. Mm-hmm. And I kind of looked up to him in a sense of like, well, he seems like a very chill guy. He's a professor here. He must be doing great. The job can't be that bad. Upon leaving John Jay, I was presented with the test. Being a John Jay student, you were able to take the test for free. The test was probably $35 at the time. And I did so. Prior to, I worked as a TSA agent from the ages of 18 to 21 while juggling college. So for me, this was more of a financial opportunity. Literally, I was in LaGuardia Airport just to swim away from Rikers Island. One thing that enticed me was seeing that officer's paycheck and his pay stub. $4 or $5 grand in 2006, 2007. Bi-weekly as an 18, 19 inner city kid, that kind of like allowed me to see that there is an opportunity. Being a young kid during 9/11, that kind of deterred me from getting into any type of military branches. So maybe law enforcement and working within the confines of the city that I was born and raised in. Maybe I can do something right. Maybe I can elevate myself and those around me.
I see. So you joined for kind of the same reasons that I did and many others. You thought this is a good chance. It's a good job. I could probably make a difference here. But then you get in there, and then obviously you go through the I believe it's the Corrections Academy, and then you go to Rikers, correct? That's where you started?
Yes. Okay. Yes. For the most part, 98% of that graduating class will be stationed at Rikers Island. You might get 1 or 2 people that can hit a borough jail or even a court. That's, again, like hitting the lottery. You might have someone of status that's on the job that might have made that adjustment for you. But for the most part, we all get sent to Rikers Island. You're giving a 2-week OJT for the first time, which is your entrance of like, okay, this is where you probably will be working. These buildings consist of this. This is protocol. This is how you enter. You show your badge and your shield at the toll booth officer that's at the gate before you cross that bridge. Once you cross that bridge, like they're just kind of giving you that intro. And then the surprise is when you actually get inside and it's chaotic and it smells terrible and inmates are screaming and it feels like there's so much tension in the air. And after these 2 weeks of on-job training, when you go through these housing areas, when you get to these rec yards, when you see these inmates kind of just roam free, going to the clinic, going to Muslim services, Christian services, going to see their lawyers, it's a free-for-all. And people that have an issue in the street, for the most part, bring that issue on into Rikers Island. On top of the fact that there's a compression of not knowing when you're getting out. Some people couldn't make bail at the time. Mind you, I was there in 2010 to 2014, so there was no bail reform. You had people there stuck for $100, and they're fighting for that life, for a life to get out and figure something out and maybe fight this on the outside. Maybe they might have been accused and wrong place, wrong time situation. Whatever the scenario, nobody wanted to be there, including staff. So I came from an element of this is going to always be terrible. This is not going to always work in your favor. And you just got to try to mediate things as they come, whether they're violent or not.
Interesting. So I had to actually bring some prisoners there, and that was not a good experience. Trust me. I was like, whoa, this is not like the Burrow facilities. Mike McMurphy says, are the inmates cooking coke on a spoon? That's an interesting question.
No. They are on heroin, though. A lot of these inmates are coming fresh off an overdose sometimes, and, they're experiencing, the remedies that come from, hey, listen, I have to support this habit because if not, I'm going to die. And that's when, violence and things of like kill or be killed mentality start to happen. And, everyone's there to fend for themselves.
Wow, that's amazing. So now you're there. So you'll learn, you're working there. So you're kind of learning the ropes of what this place is going on. What are you seeing there day to day? What kind of, I mean, obviously, I believe Rikers has been mismanaged for numerous decades now, which led to what happened recently with the receivership the other day. But what are you seeing there? What can you say about working there? What do you see the mismanagement? Do you see how they handle so simple things like inmates fighting? They keep them separated because they've had the same issues there forever. And I believe you also worked at a time when it was Norman Seabrook representing the union. So this was at a different time when he was one of the most powerful people in New York City at that time, especially as a union leader. Yeah. Shout out to Norman, who's also been on the show. But so what can you tell us about what you saw there? If this place, why is it mismanaged? Why wasn't this fixed? It's still not fixed to this day. And it's basically failed under every single mayor, especially under this last one, where it was the free-for-all you spoke of is actually the free-for-all that happened in the last couple of weeks, months, years under this mayor.
It's a system that was never built to work in the first place. Just structure-wise, things are so outdated. You see these podcasts of whether it's ex-officers like myself or ex-inmates, they'll tell you that these doors don't work. These bars are non-existent. Like it is a free-for-all. So again, when you're in a pressure cooker of people that don't want to be there, including the staff, there's no way out, literally. And for many officers, it's 9 hours. For some, it's 26. For many, it's 16 on average day to day. And the inmates are there for 24 every single day. So there's only about 6 to 7 hours in between that you're not with them. So you're dealing with these conditions as a whole, and everyone feels the same way.
So the conditions are terrible. Was there any upkeep going on there? Meaning, do you see
very minimal?
So So if there's paint chip coming off the wall, nobody's coming to, hey, let's fix this. It's just, hey, we don't care.
That's not that big when it comes to the violence that's happening or the mistreatment of staff that's happening. There shouldn't be mental health clinicians that are getting physically and verbally harassed when they're there to try to, mitigate between staff and inmate, and they're trying to do the right thing. They're getting hurt. So there's a weird correlation of just like bad tension and bad energy. And I feel like this federal receivership that is coming might be like a legal shift. It can be an indictment on the entire system. Rikers, for decades, has tried to fix itself, and now the feds are stepping in. And maybe it might be a little cliche to say, but when the feds are involved, it's serious. So the city can't guarantee its own basic safety for the inmates and nor for the officers. They're equally getting hurt, and it's all condition based. It's systemically made to not work, I feel.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will second your sentiments, especially what's going on. And here, this is in this article. I want to read this off to you. New York City has spent more than $500,000 per inmate annually in recent years, according to city data, well beyond what other large cities have spent, and yet detainees still sometimes go without food or proper medical care. A New York Times investigation in 2021 found that guards are often stationed in inefficient ways that fail to protect detainees. What do you say about that? Is there any truth to that?
There's a lot of truth to it. Whether you want to help an inmate that's in need or not, and you're not giving the proper tools to do so, what are you supposed to do? IPC, interpersonal communication, tell them everything is going to be all right, and we're going to figure this out. Verbal only works so much, and again, that's when things become violent because people have had enough.
I see. Now, what do you think of something like what they've tried to implement there? And the union has tried to say, what are you doing? 12-hour shifts. Basically, these guys are working sometimes 1 or 2 days in a row. How can you function working in a jail where the most violent people are being held? Remember, it's a holding pen, not really a jail. Like, this is not where you're supposed to be for the rest of your life, but there's guys there for a while. And here you are, no sleep. Oh, we're just going to leave you here for 2 days straight. So you're supposed to stay awake. How is this affecting the correction officer of today? And what did they do this to you in your time, or try to implement the same procedures? Oh, yeah, 12 to 24-hour tours. It's mandatory.
Mandatory for me meant basically your first and your last day, we worked 4s and 2s. So we worked 4 days straight, 2 days off. And if you had a mutual with someone, meaning that if you were 7 to 3 tour, you had to find someone in contrast, whether 3 to 11 or 11 to 7 to cover your shift. They can do that back to back, and you can work 16-hour days back to back and have 4 days off, which is what a lot of CEOs did. They overworked themselves, but then they took the first days to kind of decompress, and then the next 2 days to actually have it off and be a human, be someone of society, be a civil servant, go to the bank, go to the post office, do things that put them out of the element of that isolation that they felt every time they would go back to work. So there's a lot of tactics to, how they want to structure 12-hour days, 8-hour days. Regardless of it, it's not going to work, in my opinion. It's never worked. It's never worked prior to me, during me, and after me. Sadly to say, I don't think there's any fixture to aside from closing Rikers and putting these inmates that have committed crimes and put them through the new bail act and only hold the violent inmates accountable until their next court date in these borough jails, because they're a little more up to date. The structure, the infrastructure itself plays a big part again in the environment. And if things don't work, how can you help them and make them work?
So the newer facility would be more accommodating versus the old Rikers, which they could care less about what's going on. In fact, I think what's her name said, why is there an empty building? Why so run down? I mean, there's a good question. Their buildings are empty there. So here's another.
They use them for Law and Order episodes and stuff of that nature. So there's like tax breaks into Rikers Island. It's not just a holding facility,
So they're using it to make shows and not use it for what it needs to be. You got a depleted staff, horrible working conditions. Nobody has answers, but they're gonna make a movie set out of it. Great idea. That's New York City in a nutshell. So here's another little piece, another article. I read off some stuff to you. Guards on Rikers Island are so overworked that many clock in an average of more than 100 hours a week at the scandal-scarred jail complex, records show. Department of Corrections officers like James Internicola are forced to pick up the load, watching detainees as disgruntled staffers continue to quit and call in sick at unprecedented levels, and the number of violent incidents at Rikers continue to soar. Internicola, 55, a city corrections officer since 1996, worked 3,692 hours of overtime plus regular shifts during the fiscal year ending June 30th, or an average of 111 hours weekly, according to records. So that is, look how much he made. His rate pay, it's only 92. Look how much overtime, and that's not like he's putting in for this. Obviously, he's got no choice.
Yeah. But what what it is, Sal? As great as it looks, it's not worth sanity. It's not worth peace. That's just my personal opinion. Maybe my corrupt ways, like the internet, has me as, which is kind of my basis into the character that I portray, which is the reason why I wrote the book, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I feel truthfully that these things are made to not work. They're kind of forcing you to figure it out. And when you have a mountain of different agencies trying to figure it out, I don't know. I don't know what else to say aside from close it and then figure it out after closing it. Because if it's non-existent, then these problems can't exist.
Yeah, Neil S. says, what borough facilities? Brooklyn House and the Tombs have both been demolished. I actually think the Tombs is still there. And in Brooklyn, they re-upped. I think they
They reopened Brooklyn at 2012 or 13 because I was an officer when they did, and they asked me if I wanted to go.
I see. That probably would have been.
They had the rec yard on the roof. Like things were newer there, and if you check statistics, probably Brooklyn House in those years wasn't as crazy as GMDC was where I was stationed.
I see. IMP Franco, damn, I'm late. 28 is in already. That's the slip you give when you're late. You should know better. That's just a funny. Well, for us, in NYPD, they hand in the 20. I'm late, but you're not late. You're never late to the party. Thanks for tuning in. So, So now I just want to, before I talk about the receivership and stuff, there is a little part of your story that I want to get into because it's what happened to you. Because obviously, you got involved in some things and you ended up, getting indicted and stuff. So I don't know if you could talk about a little bit about that chapter, what kind of happened there.
A part of me, given to what I spoke about before, just an inner city kid, trying to find, better in himself as a young adult. I was 21 years old when I joined the department. A personal thing could have been that maybe I wasn't satisfied at the time and I wanted more. And I felt being a city employee and seeing that pay stub that I did back when I was in John Jay, still not there yet because I was not at top pay. Being impulsive on my actions and being subject to basically selling my integrity, something that they push not to do while you're in the academy. And sadly, I feel now, in hindsight, many of us have a price. And I can say that I had a weak moment and indecisively I did something wrong for what I thought was the right reason. I was indicted of an A1 felony, caught with over 77 ounces of cocaine on my person in Manhattan. I was being a courier for the family of someone that I met inside of Rikers who was an inmate that I knew from the street. So having that notoriety that he had in the street, I kind of fell short to, how bad could this be if I'm just driving around? I'm not bagging anything up. I'm not doing any type of hand-to-hand things. Many of us in law enforcement, corrections and PD alike, do security on the side on top of being on the job. It's a great way to network, and you kind of use the fact that you know what you're doing. You have the backing of the department behind you to a certain extent. You do have to let them know. I say that to say I didn't let them know. I kind of knew that this was an underworld of, drugs being peddled throughout the boroughs, and I was part of that transportation. It came to it where I made so much money with this organization on the outside that something I tried to avoid from the very first time an inmate proposed to bring something in along the lines of contraband. I kind of was forced to do because I already was breaking the law, whether it was on Rikers Island or not. So it's like, what's this? Like, you move kilos of cocaine outside, this should be nothing. And we're helping you out. So help the guy that's inside also out. And that's what it led to. Lo and behold, he became being a confidential informant, facing an attempted murder charge. He was facing 15 to life. So kind of used me as a scapegoat, but also the department and the Department of Investigations, they also felt the need to kind of point the finger at someone because Rikers was so much up in flames throughout this time. Again, the violence was all around, no matter what building you were in. And it kept making headlines, always for the wrong reasons. So they needed to point the finger at someone. So I kind of became the poster child for, hey, Rikers is bad because of this guy. And that's why I was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Promoting prison contraband as a peace officer would have probably got me what a civilian would get in that matter. And that's probably 8 months to a year, if that, with maybe 5 years parole. Being that they didn't feel that that was justified enough in what I was doing, especially on the outside, the amount of money that they spent. In my case, the confidential informants that they had to pay, all of this is a big tie into we're doing the right thing, and the Department of Investigations is working really hard. And don't worry, New York City mayor, we're going to make you look good. This was de Blasio's first year, I want to say. So there was a lot that was working not in my favor. So sadly, that's why I got sentenced to so much time.
I see. So there was no leniency. They really said, here's a scapegoat for us to say we're going to mount someone's head on a silver platter. We're going to mount you on the wall because, oh, he's a corrections officer. Not like they look at themselves, because the mayor, that mayor in particular, Bloomberg, de Blasio, look what he was doing. Now he owes all that money because he was in a conflict of interest, and he's a mess. No, you can't talk about that.
I have, Sal, not to interrupt you, sorry, I have a saying, and maybe I'm probably one of the few people that can only say this type of saying, but corruption is contagious.
Yeah, I'd say from what
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the uniform, because I've seen corruption, with night suits like the one you're wearing, and I've seen corruption with T-shirts that say Rikers Island. With everyone has a standard of what they should do. We're all mostly adults here that have decisions and choices. I made a bad decision and a bad choice. The only reason I kind of promote myself on these platforms is to basically tell you, I fucked up. Don't be me. Don't do this. There's a lot of confidential informants out there. There's a lot of people involved that want to see you fall, basically. In my paperwork and my court minutes, Department of Investigations with CI1 and CI2, they attempted 17 times in the 4 years and a half that I was a correction officer to try to bend me into bringing something in. and they weren't successful. So they figured out another method to make it a bigger issue. Well, obviously more money involved, less risk in my personal opinion, because I'm not bringing things into the Rikers Island. So, and that bait actually worked. Again, I did do my time. I did a little under 6 years out of that. So it worked, but because it worked, I'm kind of like letting everyone know, hey, don't do this. And sadly, there's been about, I don't know, 20 something officers that have promoted prison contraband into Rikers Island post June 23rd, 2014, which was my incident. And you would have thought that they learned. I didn't learn because there was so many others before me, so this is a cycle. This is systemically done, I personally feel, to not work,
Yeah. And here's the headline: 6 defendants sentenced to prison for corruption at Rikers Island. So, like you said, I know it's systematic, but at the same time, you came out of this in a road to redemption, and you're not afraid of what you did. You admit to what you do, but you're trying to warn people, don't fall under under this spell, and also be careful of the traps laid ahead, because you were there. Correct. And it was traps, and also that's how you fell into this. So I did want to ask you one thing, because when you did go to, I don't know which prison you went to.
I ended up in Clinton Max. There's a mid Max, Max B side, and there's a Max A side. I was in the Max A side.
Okay. Now, but how were you treated going in? Because obviously they're looking at you and they're like, well, that was a CO, and you know how that.
It took a while. Upon my initial incarceration, I was in Westchester County Jail. I couldn't be amongst my peers because technically I'm innocent till proven guilty. I had a lawyer appointed by Norman Seabrook, and then I had an outside psych lawyer come in and assist with the case to try to basically paint the picture to the court that I became a product of the system and the environment, and I fell under a certain pressure, et cetera, et cetera. Because my main goal was, what am I going to do after this? Because I know I am guilty of everything that they gave me in my indictment and in my superseding indictment. They had wiretaps for a very long time as well, so I couldn't really wiggle my way out of this unless I threw other correction officer staff under the bus, which is kind of what they wanted, and maybe things would have been broken down into an A2, because again, the last buy and bust thing that I was doing, those drugs were afforded to me by the DEA. So they could have gave me whatever amount they gave me. They gave me that much to have multiple counts of the A1, so the 8 years can stick. Regardless of all of that, coming home, I kind of saw what the media was doing and adding and subtracting what really happened. And then I started seeing it also happen to other officers, and the story wasn't right. So I kind of told myself, why don't you promote what really happened? Because that's kind of cinematic on its own. It's kind of unrealistic that basically what you guys call internal affairs is constantly coming after an officer that, he's not really in the way. I had no use of forces. I had no inmates had anything bad to say. No staff had anything bad to say. I was promoted. I got a certificate of appreciation by the warden at that time because I recovered a cuff key that was taken from an officer by an inmate through the slot. So I was technically an okay officer. Even my attendance was great. So I just fell, and many people are either about to fall or they are in the route of falling, and that's really what I'm trying to prevent.
Yeah, so you're trying to be the voice of the voiceless, or for those who are entangled in this entire circle of mismanagement that would lead to things like this. You're tired, maybe you don't make enough money, you're working there, you spend all this money going in and out of there, you're seeing things, you're getting pressure from management, you have internal affairs. Look, they definitely don't look at if you're associating with criminals like in a nightclub. So they don't look at that. We've exposed that numerous times here. So when you're not doing that, that's how you could fall into this avenue. And this is
Right.
what I was trying to build up to, because now you're out of this. You know, you went through all of this. Now you're out there. You wrote a book. You're looking back now. You're on, you know, you're talking about these things. And then finally, because you were there when this happened just the other day, you had the receivership that came down. And after all this time, all this mismanagement, here is now Rikers Island is now under the control of, eventually it's going to be under the Bureau of Prisons, which is federal. So what do you think about all of that, everything you experienced, which was a lot of that has to do with you when you worked, how everything broke down with you, because all their failures are now front and center finally, and they're paying the ultimate price because the mayor of New York City is no longer in charge of that facility, which is a good complete disgrace. And finally, Eric Adams has finally lost something publicly. So what is a little bit of your take on all of this from beginning to end with the receivership and now what's going on when they finally now have lost control as the New York City being the people in charge?
This will probably expose why things haven't been working. You know, the underlining layers that we don't see, that the media can't cover, that, excuse me, regardless of what I can tell you happens in there, regardless of how many inmates or ex-staff or current staff go on podcasts and explain Rikers this, Rikers that, Rikers this, Rikers that. It's just a voice. And yes, the voice gets heard, but the people in charge right now are going to understand that all those stories, whether made up, misconstrued, added, subtracted, fabricated, nonfiction or fiction, they have some realism to them, and they'll understand why things never came to fruition here. And now when the feds are involved, that kind of again raises the stakes on how the officers are going to act and on how the inmates are going to act, because maybe assaulting one of these federal agents walking a corridor with urine or feces, that's going to carry a 7-year sentence now instead of just going to the box like it used to, or getting a disciplinary ticket for someone that already has a triple homicide and is never coming home anyway. It doesn't do any justice for the officer that got, you know, something thrown at them. You know, psychologically that takes a toll on people, and you start to not really like the job anymore, not give a fuck. And when people stop giving a fuck, things happen.
That's exactly right. Right here, like what's her name is said here. I say bad company corrupts morals, and also said agree 100% with you, Stephen. Systematic vulnerability. So you do, people do agree with you, Steve. You make the right points, you know, from somebody who was there and had to experience this madness that's still ongoing. And you know, this whole thing with the receivership, though, you know, it should go in the right direction, but then, you know, they're going to try to appoint people that are going to try to have their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. So that's another thing, because you're taking it away from one corrupt guy, and then, you know, another corrupt guy is going to come in. And
yeah, you're kind of giving the ingredients to everyone, and you know, statistics are never 100%. So there is a percentage of people that are going to fall. So if you keep doing this, you're kind of breeding this type of characteristic that I didn't go in with the notion of I'm going to do the wrong thing. I went in with the notion that I'm going to try to do the right thing. But when you're thrown that constantly in a place that you already know is not in your favor, you know, sometimes we bend the rules, sometimes we break them, sometimes we try to uphold them, and we're still wrong, especially in uniform.
And then the thing here is so you know, you're going through all of this, in your opinion, right? Now you're looking back, you see how this is. What went wrong with why the continued mismanagement? Why was no one ever? You have all these mayors and all these correction commissioners. Nobody ever just said, okay, well, let's try to fix this. It's kind of like they were like, yeah, you know, it feels like they were telling you and everybody working there, and to this day, you know, that's the job. That just, you know, don't worry about it. They throw you to the wolves and just hope that for the best. That's kind of like it looks like to me from the outside looking in.
That is what it is. You know, you have standard procedure, you have rules and regulations that have been there for the 100 and something years that Rikers has existed. There's policy and there's scenario based rules that you have to abide because things like this can happen or they've happened in the past, and you learn. And that's what you get mostly from the senior staff is, hey, listen, you know, this is going to play out 3 ways, and all of those options, one of those is right. So there is a sense of like things do work, but you're there again with a few tools, but there's no manual. And it's like you have a screw here, you have a bolt here, and you have a hammer here. So I mean, you know, figure it out. And by the way, this is a mental health unit, so you know you got to be a psych as well and a therapist. You know, like these are things that in a 4 month span of the academy, I don't think you can teach. And even someone of my level that went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, I didn't learn it in the time that I was there. So as time passes, you kind of sharpen what you've seen and what you've been through. But that's all self, you know, that's again like a self-made thing that you have to do. Some officers don't give a fuck, some give a fuck too much, and you know they'll go up in rank because they give a fuck too much. And it's also issue of, well, I'm here and I'm going to make the best of it regardless because we're all kind of going through it.
Yeah. Here, what's her name again says, I'm glad you're here, Steven, to speak the truth to the breakdown mentality. So, you know, and you know, there's one thing in that I wanted to say, ask you too, because so things you see going on, right? Is there like, can you call as an officer and say, I'm having I'm having a bit, like the New York City Police Department has like mental, you know, or mental awareness, or you have this hotline like Papa, which I don't know, you still see police officers committing suicide all over the place, and then they come and transfer you if you're 2 minutes late, which is what the commissioner is doing now. Do you have an outlet, or are you blacklisted or blackballed because you called up and said, I'm going through a lot or I'm seeing a lot? And they're like, no, you got to go to work, pal. Is that what they do?
Sadly, those programs kind of started coming to fruition in the years that I left, 2015 plus, where you know they had mediating officers, whether they were senior staff or not, or just had a bachelor's degree in some type of behavioral therapy, and you know they'd come and talk to you and ask you if you're okay, and you know walk you outside and stuff of that nature. And you know for many, maybe those things do work, but technically everyone should be afforded that in some way outside of the job. You know, we do have the option of seeing a psych with the health benefits that city employees do get, but again, those are steps that you personally have to take. If it was maybe a little more forced, you know, who knows, maybe it might work.
I see. Yeah, because it seems like they all say we care about our officers, we care about the union, we care, but then they, you know, oh, you were 5 minutes late, so I'm going to transfer you, which is what the police department is doing right now, and that's insane. But that's the reality, folks. Your unions don't care about you. The people up top don't care. Now these people really only care about one thing: they're self-impressed people, and they just care about where's the camera, and I want to go hang out and seedy, shady places, and you know that's it. And hey, look at me, I'm a movie star. That's what I see out of these people, you know. But another question I want to ask is, so under Eric Adams, I believe there's at least 38 deaths that are recorded, I think, up to this date, in as regards of people that have been killed inside of Rikers Island. So knowing that, which sounds ridiculous that they're completely mismanaged under this clown of a mayor, in your time, what did you see? Did they separate people? Like, how does Rikers work? Because obviously you're right. We were discussing before you came on out, if you're a Latino, you want to be housed in a different area than the other people are housed. How do you manage all of that, knowing there's basically a bunch of alphas hanging around you look at them the wrong way, they're looking to fight and kill each other. What's going on, and why can't they curtail this?
A lot of this, I don't know. A lot of this, I feel I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to word. It's very hard to word. Truthfully, you have the unions that in my era, would show face and back you up more, and kind of battle with the media about how the perception of what's going on inside is really what it is, and it's not one sided. There's always three sides to a story. So I just feel that as a whole, as a true whole, this needs to end. It just needs to end. I don't know. I don't know.
You mentioned somebody too here, and again, IMP Franco once again says corrections department has lawyers for different situations, not just criminal. When I need a housing lawyer, they provided one. When I needed uniforms, Norman Seabrook hooked me right up. So he does mention, you mentioned him to Norman Seabrook, and I've had him on, and he went through his own stuff that people have a lot to say, which I believe he's a little bit of a target. And he was a Trump guy also that came out for Trump, and he targeted him right after that. And it was Brit Bahara and all that. But in your experience with him, what can you say about Norman Seabrook, who ran? He was the head of the union. Obviously, I got this guy, Benny Basio, who I don't think he's like Norman. I remember Norman. I was on the job, and this guy was like the top union guy in the city, if not the state. He has a lot of solutions. So I don't know if he could give you thoughts on Norman. And
Norman was a little more than a voice for correction officers. He really did attempt to let them know that anything they were going through, to please personally tell him. I mentioned to you earlier, I'd see Norman every 7 to 10, 12 days. I worked what we call the Why Me Gate, which is a holding pen right before the intake, where they put inmates that just had a altercation with staff or other inmates, previously cut inmates that they have to rehouse and throw in another building because they're not able to live in the building currently. Inmates waiting to go to protective custody. So I worked at that gate, which is right before the entrance to the actual building itself, and to the actual housing area itself, sorry. And he would shake everyone's hand. He'd let them know that I'm here, and he'd listen to you. And he'd, lock a time to figure whatever your situation was. He'd try to figure it out.
I always felt that Norman doesn't want to run for political office, which I think he could win anywhere he tries to do anything in New York State. The Bureau is not a bad idea for him. I'm just saying he could be the head.
It's a possibility. During my particular case, he mentioned to the media that this was a witch hunt, which is, hey, listen, there's so much going on. This is the guy, and that's how when the media perceived me this way, politically, it gave that type of energy. So it was a lose-lose situation, and that's why I dealt with, again, the 8 years that I got sentenced to. Regardless of it being a sting operation, they wanted to make it clear that we're cleaning up Rikers for the first time, and we're going to do it whether Norman Seabrook says this guy is innocent or not.
That's the thing. And I thought Norman was a phenomenal head of if for all the other unions in the city, go back and look at the reign of Norman Seabrook as the head of COBA, because he did as much for his officers that I think everybody else has failed. Pat Lynch was a complete disaster because, it's funny because they both knew the same guy, but he was too busy hanging out at Jimmy's over there and then at Con Sofrito to care about his officers, and he basically sold the young out to enrich himself with those contracts he made with the PBA and the union. But Norman never did that. Norman was always fighting for the people, and he knew how to rub elbows. But man, he fought for his people. I gotta tell you,
he tried, even affording officers on post a bottle of water, coming through with other COBA staff and giving officers that were on post with no fan. It's 115 degrees. You have a stab-proof vest on. You're in a high classification environment. All these guys are, fighting for that one fan that they do get in the day room. Half of it is non-existent because they took the pokes from the fan to stab each other with. So that bottle of water and someone from the outside shaking hands and saying, "Hey, listen, you need something, like in particular, let me know. Call me when you get out of here." Like, it was that interaction.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So shout out to you, Norman. I believe that your calling in life is going to be more in the future. If you want to run for office, I think you have. There's a picture right there. There's Jimmy. Now let me ask you something, just before we, because I did want to get to a comment here too. But so, Stephen, in corrections, do you not have some kind of policy that says you can't associate with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely engaged in criminal activity?
Anyone convicted of a felony, you need to let the department know, what that status is with you and that person, whether they're a relative or even in some cases live in the same dwelling as you. They can be your father might have got incarcerated and he's still on parole because of the laws from the crack epidemic in the 18s. He has 15 years post supervision, and now you're a young woman on the job, and you're a good officer, you're trying to do the right thing, and you have to let staff know, hey, by the way, my dad is a convicted felon. And some don't care, some maybe can relate, others might shame and judge. So it's a little gray area when it comes to, is it worth telling the department that you're friends with somebody or that you have an association with somebody? Because let's be honest, especially if you're in New York City, it's kind of hard to not chill and mingle with felons. Your neighbor could be a felon, your best friend could be a felon, your spouse could be a felon.
Well, the idea here is, I believe, well, the concept is 75% of America has some kind of criminal record. So, I mean, you look at this picture. Here's the NYPD in uniform. There's Pat Lynch. And into the left is the infamous restaurant presario, Jimmy Rodriguez, who is, he's owned, I'm sure you've heard of Jimmy's Cafe with everything that happened there. He had Don Coqui, where he was, we came to find he's a mob associate. He's a self-admitted criminal. And then we have Con Sofrito, where it's the Hall of Felons. It literally is. And the amount of, and the stuff that went on there, I mean, you would think a place that has a human trafficking report would say, okay, all officers, you can't be do not come here. So
sometimes Sal, trying to abide by every single law is inhumane in itself. For you to restrict me to have a personal relationship with someone while upholding the law, regardless of what they have done, if you're not entangled in that mess and you thread lightly and you don't mix business and pleasure, it's doable. I don't think there's nothing terribly wrong with it, unless, again, you guys are in a act to commit something, and it's blatant that that's what it is. But until proven guilty, you're technically innocent.
That's the point I was trying to make, because, others have been, have this stigma. Oh, well, you're friends with a guy that has this record, but Roger Stone didn't commit any crimes with me. The police
department. People make mistakes.
Yeah. Stephen, I hate to say this, but if a police officer in NYPD or whatever even say hello to you, they could say, oh, he's hanging out with someone who's convicted of a crime, association. Right. And I'll tell you what, they can even right now, and I can tell you in my own case, cannot describe what knowingly or an association is. What is an association? They have 20 answers for this question, because apparently if you're in a picture with someone, that's enough to go after you. But when it's these pictures we show with this certain individual who's had a plethora of issues around them, that needs a further investigation and scrutiny. We can't just, because the police commissioner is there. I see. So this rule is so vague and ridiculous and has been used to deconstruct one's life and take their livelihood away. And it's not just the police department, it's also corrections have done it. And I just want to know from someone who was there, this stupid rule, I guess they try to drum out corrections people as well. And then there's Eric Adams in his heyday. Oh man, I don't do that. What did he say? I love to go to the BX up at Jimmy's spot. They still have never asked this guy, Eric Adams, what his affiliation is with that gentleman, because he had 7 burner phones. I don't know who he's talking to. He's got burner phones, signal apps, but I did nothing. I did nothing.
Sal, Eric Adams kind of moves like a New York City cat, and sometimes we get mad at, he comes from a certain element, especially being in uniform once himself. So he has a savviness to him. He might be a little outlandish with things he says, or the way he portrays how cool he is. I think he just has to find that line, and you have a responsibility. We appointed you for a reason. Like, you can be cool, but you were cool, prior to this. Like, you don't got to prove it to the city.
Yeah, it's funny because the other day he said, I can't remember the numbers. I have dyslexia, right? In the actual paperwork is 2,000 pages, but in there was a number for the passcode for his phone. It's 7 digits. Okay, he remembered it all that time up until they said we need the phone, and all of a sudden he has dyslexia. So you have to understand how this guy operates. It's the mind of a true criminal. And I'm saying, if people are going to do value judgments on you, I've got a guy who should be judged 1 million times over way before you, Steve, because the things that guy's involved with and the people he has been around, it's always been the same MO with this guy. And he's the mayor. It's truly, I don't know.
He should be held definitely at a higher standard, more than what he once was, which most of us once were as peace officers.
Yeah, and here's something. Yeah. Again, IMP Franco says, "Wow, Jimmy was quite the popular socialite." Yeah, yeah. Well, that's to say the least. Hey, look, he can do what he wants. I'm just keep pointing to people that have badges and politicos that here you go, judging other people, screaming things, making these decisions. I mean, look at yourself. Look who you surround yourself with. But if you picture with Steven, you might lose your job. They might say, "Oh," but they don't even look at themselves, and they don't know what association or knowingly means. Those 2 words,
Correct.
no explanation. Just it's arbitrary. We'll do it as we go along. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Anthony DiMaggio said this. He said, "Make sure you're a member of the club if you're going to ask the department for help dealing with the emotional, psychological stresses of the job. The department shrinks are the most dangerous threat to a Leo's career." I wouldn't want to be in front of those shrink, because I think they can do a number on you.
I've seen an instance of a tenured officer who has not been able to have his personal protection firearm for the last 17 years because of something that he did 17 years ago that he said, I guess, to maybe a psych that was on site, or his personal, and it came up in his paperwork, and they deemed him unfit to carry a weapon outside of the job. He couldn't even do hospital runs. And this is an officer that was there, I want to say, 22 years,
Yeah. It's and again, I've also read, I think it was recently, not only in New York City Police Department, former officer that committed suicide, but I saw something about a corrections guy, and he was retired.
Many, I think I've had, in the 4.5 years that I was employed there, 3 or 4 correction officers take their life. And, it's just something that they bring up at roll call, and they have an envelope at the front gate for his family if you want to donate something to his family to take care of any bills or funeral arrangements. And all right, stay safe. It's there, there's no there's no empathy for nothing, because it's a sign of weakness, and we're kind of trained to always be, bold. No pun intended.
It's a touchy subject, and here's one right here. A retired New York City correction officer was shot and killed by Suffolk County cops in a gory scene in front of his Long Island home Friday after he allegedly charged officers with a knife, according to police and law enforcement sources. And see, this is what happens. Every situation is different in your life, But what did this guy see that led to this? And that were there any signs in other people? I always say, look, if you're on that job, you were on the job, you know that sometimes you reach out and say, hey, man, what's going on? You okay? You know, maybe go to a baseball game, get their minds off anything. Because if you see anything, it isn't worth it doing this. And I see this a lot. And it's like the unspoken thing. Do not talk about this because they ostracize you or whatever.
And you know, the PTSD is real. You know, it might not hit you instantaneously after whatever tragic event you probably witnessed or were a part of. But I know when I hear a bell, a certain bell, that means there's an alarm on Rikers Island. And I live in Miami. There is no alarm or Rikers Island around me. But when I hear that bell, it's kind of like an indication to like, you remember this, you know? So
Yeah.
that's a form of PTSD, and that's pretty light for many. Officers have been drenched in blood by another inmate. Officers have been cut and stabbed. So there's different levels to this. And, you know, I just gave you a scenario of something minimal that I personally deal with. So imagine the people that, you know, were what we like to say, like really in the field.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm you know, I've had to deal with it myself. They treated me a certain way. I don't talk about it, but you know, when you have congressional people, federal people chasing you down like you're some kind of, I don't know, world-class criminal / imitator of Roy DeMeo, when you have nothing other than you're friends with someone that they don't like, who himself never committed a crime with me or anything, that could leave a lasting effect on you. So I know what you're talking about, and it's real. And I think that if people have issues, they should reach out to someone, especially in this field, especially at Rikers, because you see a lot. There's a lot going on there, and we
It's and you know, it doesn't have to be just violence. There's other things, you know, that many don't want to talk about. Those cringe topics that officers don't even want to relive or speak of, or even let a family member know that they're going through, because it's just very inhumane. And it's like, you know, you can't stop it. The feds are here. Maybe they can stop it.
That's what you could hope. So now, before we you know, cut this, we cut the cord here because I know you got a lot of things going on. So you moved to Miami, right? You're in Miami.
Yeah. I've been here approximately 2.5, getting into my 3rd year.
Same like me. I've been here over 3 years. Even I lived here in the early 90s, late 80s as a kid. So, you know, I'm familiar with Florida. So what are you doing now? How do you feel that you're in Miami versus New York? You don't have illegals on the corners threatening people, stabbing people. You don't have that mentally deranged throwing garbage cans or peeing on things. What are your thoughts on, you know, what you're doing now and how living in sunny South Florida is versus a city that's so corrupt and corroded? I don't know what to say about
Gotham City versus living in Gotham City. There's a sense of tranquility here that I can manage. You know, I'm not going to say that crime doesn't happen here. I'm not going to say that there's not homeless activity here, but it's so much less. It's a lot more diversified in the sense that this is a tourist-based city, just like New York, but we have a lot more space here. So, you know, with the factor of weather being a calm, cool 80 to 90 degrees for most of the year, and, you know, casually dealing with rain and hurricanes, which I haven't experienced yet. I feel that this was probably the best adult decision I've ever made coming from where I came from, because you can say, oh, he was only an officer for 4.5 years. He didn't really see anything. There's officers there for 30 plus. They've seen the real stuff and they've seen things evolve and change. But I also did a little under 6 years as an inmate. So, you know, collectively 11 years of jail, prison, systemic justice affiliation throughout the time. It was a long stretch. So I kind of decompress here. I still go back home every 4 to 6 weeks, But having that advantage of it only being a 2-hour flight, like there's certain perks. I love coming back home, which is now Miami, and I enjoy it. I think this is a good retirement stay for those that are thinking twice. Uh, and you can make the best out of it here. If people here are happy, they are either relaxing on vacation, partying, or just visiting and enjoying the weather, and that means people are happy. So when people are happy, not too many negative thoughts and energy surround that happiness.
You know what else we have? We have Highlight, which you go to Magic City Fronton starting in September at 7:00 on Fridays. The new season will start, and we'll hope to see you there soon.
And we have beaches. I have a collective. I'm more of like the Brickell area, so most of the beaches I have at my hand are 7 to 14 minutes away. So I have options, and again, tranquility and peace. You can't pay for that,
And also pizza, right? What's your favorite pizzeria? What's your favorite pizza?
They're trying to get it, but regardless of Miamians trying to get the pizza thing, just like they're trying to do the smash burger stuff now too. I would say Joe's Pizza, and Joe's is still New York style pizza. Miami Slice is up there.
Miami Slice, yeah.
Miami Slice gets a good rating. They're more of like interaction and experience based. It's a good place to take a date. But Joe's in Wynwood, 100%, just like Joe's is in I forget, North 6th Street in Williamsburg. So
yeah, I know in Manhattan, it's on 6th Avenue, and I think Joe. Listen, I actually know Joe, the old man. He's from Bagheria, like my family. He's from Sicily. Joe's a good man. He's got a good family. That is a quintessential New York slice. And coming from a time my father knew him, he's kind of like family. So I love Joe's. Okay. I can't argue you. I've been there myself.
As a Queens native, it would be between Gabby's, Danny's, or Margarita's.
I think I've been to one of those. I've been one of the names there. But Queens has a huge list. It's big. You got Rosa's. You have Howard Beach. You got New Park. You got Gino. It's like Queens was a big hub for pizzerias. And, one thing I say, pizza brings everybody together.
I agree.
Even if you hate each other politically, you have a slice of pizza, you go, hey, I can sit down with this guy.
It wasn't too bad. You're just expressing perspective and opinion, and that's really why I always go on these shows, because it's not about just reaching a certain demographic of audience. Like, we could be talking to ex-law enforcement or law enforcement that's currently listening right now. But for me, it's just, again, the message. When you purchase the book and you open the book, it says, I'll show you right here. We all make mistakes. I'm just trying to sell you mine. And a lot of that has to do with don't be me. The whole point is to not be me. That's all I can say. So I appreciate you having me on. We should link soon. You're not too far away. We can have a slice of pizza and let's get going.
I'm definitely going to be in Lone Depot Park this weekend, actually. I love going. I'm a Mets fan. Where can people follow you or reach out to you? Because I know you're on X and Instagram. So I don't know if you give everyone your handle.
Yes. My Instagram primarily. I did have a YouTube channel that I tried to put together during my COVID years when I was still on parole, where I reached out to Raekwon, the chef under the Wu-Tang Clan, who kind of made this shirt and wore this in like 1996 during his Built for Cuban Links album debut. I reached out to him, told him I want to reenact the shirt. I have the QR code to the book in the back while I interview people that are wearing the shirt. And I wanted to share what an experience outside of just an officer is on Rikers. So I spoke to a ex-inmate. I spoke to someone that worked for EMS that would pick up inmates. I spoke to someone that was a school teacher that had a student very close to him who became an inmate while he was in his classroom. So perspective is something that I enjoy. And there's a few episodes out. You can type that in, A1 Everything in YouTube. And my Instagram is Chill Stevie. My ex handle is Chill Stevie Guns.
Okay. And where can people get your book? Because I also saw that. I want people
Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. The full link is in most of my bios. So if you want to listen to the audio version, if you just want to read the ebook, paperback and hard copies are available on every platform. I just entered Walmart and Target. So for someone that was transporting cocaine while being a correction officer in New York City and living to speak about this not so long ago, because I've only been home for 5 years, to have a book in Walmart and Target says a lot about what I have to say and the message that I'm trying to push out there.
Stephen, you're the story of redemption. The rise, you started, there was the rise, the fall, and now the rise again. And
Thank
that's
you.
why we don't condemn people just because they've been in jail or whatever, because nobody knows the situation. At least you're not running a seedy place, having the police department run errands for you or whatever the hell's going on with that other guy. But I'm just giving you a contrast because some people never change while others do. And that's your story. And just to remember, if you watch in biblical terms, whether it's the Bible or Jesus Christ, they always pick somebody you'd say, wow, that guy's got all these issues to rise. All the people, Moses always had problems. Moses was having all kinds of problems with his family. 10 Commandments. Other people, it could go a list going on about. I don't want to bore you here with the history lesson, but Jesus, God, they always pick someone you scratch your head and go, that person, and that's your story, because that's what they like to see. People can relate to the story of redemption. So, Stephen, thanks for coming on. I hope I have you on in the future.
Appreciate it.
We'll link up. It's funny, Cuban Links, who's also had an incident with Jimmy Rodriguez at Jimmy's place. It's that guy's like connected. Pete Diddy, Jay-Z, you name it, Hillary Clinton, and the police department. So, but I will link up with you.
New York City is Gotham City, man.
It really is. It really is. Hopefully Miami doesn't come that way, but definitely in the future.
We'll be all right.
We'll definitely be linking up, because I do come to Miami a lot, and there's a lot to do, including Magic City Fronton. So, Stephen, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Have a good one.
I hope to bring you back at a certain point for future discussions. I'm sure the Rikers Island and receivership will have some twists and turns.
Let's see what happens. Hopefully, it's for the best. Hopefully, the terror of said place ends. And people stop losing their lives there and their mental.
Yeah, mental awareness is a big thing. Executive Perspective had a show about that too, and that's just in the New York City Police Department primarily, but they were talking about all city agencies in general. So I think you put a little spotlight on that today, and I think people should pay attention. If you know someone who's in distress, hey, man, reach out. It's not a bad thing. You need a breather, because, listen, corrections, NYPD, fire department, there's a lot that goes on. It's unsaid, and unfortunately, you don't want a final solution to something when there is a solution. There always is, in my opinion. So, Stephen, thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day in sunny South Florida. There you go. Stephen Dominguez. What a story. A story of redemption. And I always like people like that, and I think it's always good to present them, because you need to learn their story, hear them. Very knowledgeable, Stephen. He knows a lot what happened in Rikers, but yeah, he admits he messed up, but he also wants you to know that he learned from that mistake. He doesn't want that mistake to happen to others. So kudos to Stephen, who to me is a good guy, and I will be linking up with him, because there are plenty of pizzerias to visit in Miami, and also, like I said, Magic City Fronton, Friday nights starting in September. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into the final part of the show, which is sports, right? So how could I miss this? The New York Knickerbockers, the best way to describe last night, again, they came back and then they fall behind. I remember in the 90s, Reggie Miller hitting those 2 3-pointers back to back and having that infamous choke sign, and that's what the Knicks did. And you could only hope that the New York Knicks are not repeating the 90s Knicks that did choke a series away to the Indiana Pacers. Now it's 3-2. They got to come back to Madison Square Garden. Anybody who said the Celtics were out of it, They're too good of a team to just be out of it. You need to beat them. Hopefully they put something together, the Knicks. Also, of course, there it is, the infamous picture. Reggie Miller. I remember him taking that ball, hitting that three-pointer, then on the inbound pass, steals it, hit the next three. Crazy. I was like, unbelievable. I can't believe he did it. And it was infamous because he did it to Spike Lee, who, although he's a bleeding heart liberal leftist who pretty much hates everyone, he is a big Knick fan. And that was quite the moment. I'll never forget that one. There it is. That's them hugging after all of that stuff. It was great theater to see that. But I do remember the choker. That's what the Knicks did. So you hopefully get that together. Also, unfortunately, the Mets, they lost the final game last night. I think they got shut up by the Pirates, but of course they won the first couple of games. So I believe they're 28-16. We're still in first place. And now on to the New York Yankees. And that's always quite the series. Mets and Yankees. Hopefully this could be a World Series at the end of the year, but I'm hoping for that. So that'll be a big series this weekend. And hey, Juan Soto, our man, returns. It says it's going to be 50,000 people against one. They're going to try to get one on me. You know, it's part of it. And that's Juan Soto's return to Yankee Stadium as a member of the Mets. So that ought to be something. Of course, the Mets always perform well at Yankee Stadium. I know they always come to life. They're always up for the challenge. And I do think as a baseball team, the Mets are slightly better than the Yankees, especially as presently constituted. So that'll be a series to watch. So watch that for this weekend. Also, like I stated, I will be at Lone Depot Park in Hialeah for the Marlins this weekend. You know, I believe it's Cuban Heritage Day. And you know that I love my cafecitos. I do speak of Cow Bakery. I do like to go there a lot. Cow Bakeries, I believe they're up to 17 locations now, 16 or 17 locations all in South Florida. Tony Cow is the owner. Trying to reach out, hopefully have him on here soon to give you his story because I'm for small businesses, and I believe that business has been booming. But Cow Bakery is a big thing, but it will be Cuban Heritage Day. There's not a Cow Bakery in Lone Depot Park, which they should have. But they do have what they call 3:05 cafecito time, which is in the fifth inning. So it's always a good time to be there. The Marlins may not be such a great team; they're an upstart team, and they will be a good team maybe in the future. But again, it's a good time to go. So I'll be there this weekend. Also, I don't know if anybody's been watching wrestling. WWE. John Cena, as you know, is like the perennial good guy who's become a heel. And that's, if you do watch WWE and you watch that, you'll say to yourself, I talking to other people, I know as a heel, John Cena, I think he needs a stable, which is a faction, which is like other wrestlers in a group. And like Hollywood Hulk Hogan had the NWO. John Cena as a heel, it just doesn't, for me, it's not translating. He is the champion. He had a great pay-per-view match with Randy Orton, by the way. Two guys in their 40s. That was very good for guys in their age group. And also, it was a little bit of a throwback to 20 years ago when they first wrestled, which was a touching moment for the WWE to do things like that. But I do think that John Cena should have had a stable around him because it's just not resonating like when Hollywood Hulk Hogan at that time, which was Hulk Hogan, was a bad guy. And it's always cool to be the heel in wrestling. So I did want to throw that out there. So tomorrow, 8:05 live, Finest Unfiltered. As you know, that's the round table. I believe John and Marlon will be on there. They might have surprise of who's coming on Friday, so we'll see. You could go back and watch Executive Perspective. Yesterday was at 17:05, 5:05 live every Wednesday. You could check that episode out. They were on yesterday. I was watching it, but I got to watch the last couple of minutes of that show because I got something happened. I only watched like about an hour and a half, and I got caught up. So please watch that because they're always giving you an executive perspective on things. So 8:05 in the morning, you can watch John and the Finest Unfiltered group. We'll see who comes on. I also had an interview this morning. Check it out. He's been having political candidates for office come on. So you'll just see him popping up. Wednesday had an interview. Today he had one for, I believe it was for the comptroller. There was a candidate for city comptroller. So we'll see. Don't forget to check it out. And also, I'll be back next week on Tuesday at 1:05 or 13:05 p.m. Eastern Live. So thank you all for tuning in. This has been Sal Greco. If you can, once again, like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Hit that notification button on Rumble, the Rumble button. Share it out. And also, if you're on X, please hit that share button, the like button, and spread it out to all, especially if you like what you see. Because as I said, this show is a fact-based analysis show, and we try to educate people. So here I am signing off for the weekend. I hope everybody has a great weekend. I'm not a Knicks fan, but I'll say let's go Knicks just because it is New York City, and you got to hope for something because it's, you kind of heard a lot of stuff here that was doom and gloom, and it shouldn't be that way. But until this clown in office is mayor, you kind of have to live like that right now. So unfortunately, because he's not facing the criminal trial he should have been facing. So yeah, Chronicles of Collapse says, have a great day, all. Thanks for your work. Thank you. Thanks for everybody. Marlon, IMP Franco says Yonkers, baby. Also, what's her name? Thanks for your comments. Everybody, thank you for your comments. Jumping in the chat. You could always do that here. I like to incorporate everyone. So we'll be back on Tuesday, 13:05 or 1:05 Eastern, live tomorrow. Check out Finance Unfiltered, 8 in the morning. Please go back, watch Executive Perspective from yesterday, and also you can watch the prior episodes. Until then, have a great weekend. Enjoy life. Let's go Mets this weekend. And, of course, signing off from sunny South Florida, which is a sunny place for shady people.
So this is a biblical moment. When Jesus was on the cross, he said, God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. All these Negroes who are asking me to step down, God, forgive them. Are you stupid?